So welcome to the second episode of the RDSP tutorial series within which I'll be demonstrating some of the effects that RDSP can do. So you can have some quite good fun with it. You can create robotic voices, science fiction effects. You can add reverberation and delay and thicken sounds as well. As just using it as an instrument, if you like, or just to play around and create some cool effects. So some things I've never tried before today, but I know are theoretically possible. So the first thing I'm going to try and make is a Dalek type of voice, which you should be able to do. I have got a number of microphones. This is a cheap microphone I bought from Tandy something like 25 years ago. I don't know if you remember that shop. It's like an electronics shop that we used to have in the UK. I think it was an American brand, I believe, and now I think you can buy online from it. And what I've got to hand to demonstrate at least what sort of things RDSP can create, but with other equipment, I've got a kind of a general effects box behind me here, which I've had for a long time. It has echoes, and it's got vocoding and all kinds of fun stuff. But in the first instance, I'm going to try and make a Dalek voice with it, and then I'm going to record my voice without any effect on it, and we'll get RDSP to do the same thing. So what this sort of is, I'll show you a picture and insert that. It's basically where you kind of fade the sound out, turn the volume up and down really, really quickly. So what we have here is like a simple tone, like a clear tone that's shown as a sine wave. If you imagine turning the sound up and down in accordance with that wave at the top, you achieve this by basically multiplying the two values together. So when it gets to 0, it goes quiet, and in the middle, like it shows there. Now, testing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Or you could say, Doctor, what do you think of my creations? Or something like that. Doesn't sound that good. Let's try turning on the effect. Doctor, what do you think of my creations? So first of all, we've got to start RDSP. And then we need to set the directory to where the samples are located. So we can load the bit of voice that we just had without the effect into the sample slot 2. And then we're going to have a go at, much in the spirit of Blue Peter, loading a sound I created and designed earlier. I ought to explain what all this stuff means. Now, I've covered some of that on the previous episode, but in this one I'll just explain. We've got a flag that says use sample, which is this hex and 80 value, the envelope number. There are 128 envelopes available. Which sample ID to use, since we're using samples, not waveforms. We have a filter that can soften and brighten the sound. We're going to leave that fully open. Then we're going to repeat this envelope where we turn the volume up and down really quickly. And we have to step it up in steps of 127 because the way I've designed it, it only steps up to 100th of a second. So, using that,
Doctor, what do you think of my creation?
We get this. Now 208 is actually normal speed. It sounds better, slightly slower.
Doctor, what do you think of my creation?
You can change that wildly. Now, because I mentioned it steps at 1/100th of a second, it actually has a step in the wave, which creates some distortion. You can smooth it out with the filter, but actually it always sounds distorted on the TV. All these synthesizers have limitations like that, and RDSP has its own characteristics and limitations. To just show you, the program I used to draw the waves was actually written in BASIC. It just made it easier because it's a mathematical transform and you can hear a wave or you can draw a wave. That's what this does. I just draw the sine wave or I draw some lines and I multiply things together so I get a truthful representation of what the sound is actually like. In other words, you see the sort of distortion when it has to be stepped. Right, let's turn the volume down a little bit because we're going to put an echo on.
Doctor, what do you think of my creation?
I previously run some of those commands on the left. I thought perhaps you didn't want to see me typing all the time. So star R delay 200 space 40, which is the time and how much feedback. So 200 milliseconds and about less than half feedback where it echoes. I'm choosing a sound from my collection. I've had some of these sounds for like 27 odd years, pre-internet days. They're public domain samples. I'm not quite sure what a Moshka is, but anyway, that aside, this is another sample to play with. So we're playing on sound channel 2 that has no echo on it, just to hear the sample. Now playing it on sound channel 1 with delay. And one tone lower, because you can use this to play music. So you could, play chords and everything. There's a typo, just a comma, and type the same volume. That goes down another tone, demonstrating you can repitch the samples really easily, like we used to do on the Amiga. And I've got currently 3 effects built into, or traditional effects algorithms built into RDSP: delay, chorus, which thickens the sound, and reverb, which provides a bit of reverberation, like in a room or a hall. Now I'm going to turn the volume down a bit more because I've had a bit of clipping there. It's one thing analog does a lot better than digital. Naturally, analog distortion is quite a nice thing. It starts to sound a bit weird if you go really deep, because I went down to 104 there rather than 184. So let's just try that again. And play the sample. So the chorus, as I kind of doubles it up, you can kind of hear it's rather thicker there. As I turn off the chorus, it sounds a lot thinner there. That's another thing about digital stuff compared to analog synthesizers. Now, RDSP, because of how I've designed it, has a slightly more thick sound compared to a lot of digital synthesizers. The reason for that is of how I've done the maths inside. It's not using somebody else's engine. I'm turning on the reverb now, putting on room reverb. Once I'm able to type, I think I did this quite late at night, that's my excuse. Loading another sound. I think I got fed up with Moshka, whatever that is. I'm going to look that up on Google and see if it can tell me. I'm almost frightened to do so. I use this as a pain sound in a game called Legends of Magic. About 7 or 8 years ago now. It's actually, again, from a PD library. I didn't really fancy... I could have just stubbed my toe and recorded that. That would have worked perfectly well. But I didn't. I used somebody else's voice. Try to make the room bigger. But failing that, if we think rooms aren't big enough, we can have a hall, which is just as a bigger reflection. sounding quite echoey now. So I think, again, I can remember this, but it's useful to show it rather than just typing in magic numbers. And I've added delay with reverb, I suppose, making it much more echoey. Which is really quite a good effect. Quite useful in a game, perhaps. Something dramatic happened. I've turned everything on now, including the chorus. So it's starting to sound quite nice. And I've actually got synesthesia, so chorus actually looks orange to me, but when I explain that I actually see sounds as colours, people will think I'm a bit crazy, but it's just a thing that some musicians have. Look up synesthesia if you're curious. So when you died in Legends of Magic, I basically just pitched when you killed a monster in Legends of Magic, I just used the sound turned down really low. Sounding quite cool there, I think. So RDSP is configured via numbers, and that's quite a conventional approach that you would have on a synthesizer. You could turn features up and down or press switches to turn things on and off. But I wanted to try making a front end. Now I sell a development kit, I'll put a link in the description, for RISC OS for making games and multimedia programs. It contains case studies as well as libraries that simplify game development. So it seemed to fit quite well there, that rather than expecting people to know how to set RDSP up, I would provide a simple library function in this kit that means you could use 3 or 4 parameters that lets you choose some simple kind of sounds configurations you might want to make. And this program demonstrates that. It's kind of in the style of an old welcome program. It's going to start things with a bang in a moment, I think. Probably. So another feature of RDSP is that you can basically do a bitwise XOR of 2 sound channels together, which creates some nice distorted special effects. Some of my synthesizers do this, the Behringer Monopoly does, as does the MS-20, and so did the Commodore 64. Unfortunately, I don't have a real Commodore 64 anymore, but I do have this emulator called the C64, which I would recommend, as it's great fun. It has an original style keyboard as well. It's not doing it at the minute, but if I press the effects button, you can see it is. I have an example in my RDSP example set, which does it. That creates a nice, cool kind of interference pattern. If I play the envelope on its own without the XOR happening, it sounds an awful lot cleaner. We can also do it for sound samples. Not very clear, that actually is a sample at the beginning of the video, but it's quite a cool special effect, as I will demonstrate the sample on its own, without the XOR.
Doctor, what do you think of my creations?
And that's just against a pure tone. So just to clarify that, the first parameter there, the number 2, 200 in hex, is muting that sound channel. So you don't hear the sound. So with the sample, it was hidden effectively. And the channel that's been XOR'd, that's being controlled with the 400 in hex, the 4 flag. That then turns on the XOR with the previous channel, thereby mixing in the sound into the channel you actually are hearing. That creates the desired effect. And synthesizers work much the same way when you turn down the modulating channel. So in this video we've covered ring modulation, creating like robot voices and Dalek effects. We've looked at the sort of simple front end to RDSP called SoundMake in the development kit. We've just looked at XOR sound effects. In the next video, we'll look at sound cueing, recording, and also making some music. Thanks for watching. Look forward to seeing you next time.